And for our next session, we have Brad Griffith, who's Director of Online Learning Initiatives, and he's going to be talking about OER collaborations through Pressbooks. That is Pressbooks in 2020, the Online Consortium of Oklahoma launched Open OCO, a shared instance of Pressbooks EDU.
To give you an idea of what we're going to cover today, I'm going to give you a very brief overview of Pressbooks. So what is Pressbooks? Pressbooks 101. We're going to talk about the background of Open OCO Pressbooks, which you've already heard a little bit about in the last session that we just did, and also in the State of Online Learning in Oklahoma last Wednesday. We are going to discuss the unique outline of the system agreement that we have for Open OCO Pressbooks, because it is a shared consortium agreement for the platform that we're using. I am going to do a little bit of a deeper dive specifically into the funding opportunities that we have available, or should I say coming available in summer of 2021. We're going to discuss the current collaboration opportunities that are underway. We have a couple of them that have already started, and then some that are potential on the line who are interested in getting other faculty and staff participants on these projects. And then we're going to end the session with talking about how you can really get involved with Pressbooks. And then I will promise you there are going to be, I think, 4 polls that I have prepared throughout the presentation or session today that really are just going to gauge on your awareness and kind of interest in these types of opportunities. So let's go ahead and get started. The very first thing that I will tell you, again, about Pressbooks, and I think Kathy also mentioned this in her presentation during the last one here, is that it's an open book creation platform. So Pressbooks is not necessarily just for the academic environment. It's actually based upon WordPress, which you may be most commonly familiar with as a blogging platform. Pressbooks is a super easy tool to use, one that does not necessarily require technical expertise. You don't have to be a computer scientist or a graphic designer to make things look good. But again, it's also not unique to academics. So you can see in the sample picture here, which I've actually retrieved from the Pressbooks website, this is actually a novel, I believe, that's been developed. So you can publish anything from an open textbook to a manuscript, really any type of textual publication that you want to make in the digital environment. Pressbooks is an accessible platform. That was actually one of the requirements that we made when we were searching for an OER development platform, is that it needed to be inclusive for students with disabilities. So if you require, for example, a screen reader in order to interact with digital content, we wanted to make sure that the platform was fully capable of supporting that and that there would be no barriers for students that need that technology. It is dynamic. There are a lot of different features in here that if you've ever used something like Pearson's MyLab, McGraw-Hill Connect, those other types of paid resources where you get a lot of those bells and whistles, the embedded quizzes, adaptive learning, those things can be actually recreated similarly within Pressbooks. We do get this question very frequently, so I wanted to make sure to mention it here. Pressbooks are printable. So Pressbooks is actually able to generate file formats of, I believe, 9 or 11 different types, which definitely makes it easy to have printed copies made available. It does make using your own content very easy, which again was a very attractive feature, and I think also why OSU decided to go with Pressbooks before our group did. And then one of the most exciting features that I think is part of this platform that really was a hook for our groups is the ability to clone existing Pressbooks. So there are just hundreds of organizations now that have Pressbooks and are producing OER content with this platform. And it's very easy to actually adapt existing Pressbooks into your own Pressbooks instance, which we'll actually do a demonstration of shortly. So now that I've kind of given you that level 101 overview here, I am going to pull up a poll on the screen. So just in case you need to have an overview of these, how familiar are you with Pressbooks? What is your level of exposure to it? Are you brand new to it? Have you heard of it, but you're not quite sure what it is still? You know about Pressbooks and perhaps have seen some examples built in it. Do you have a Pressbooks account through OpenOCO or OpenOK State, perhaps somewhere else, such as the Lumen Learning or Rebus communities? Or do you have a Pressbooks account and you are really ready to start exploring some of these advanced features? So I'm going to launch this poll and you should see it pop up on your screen. So please go ahead and take just a moment here to respond, and I'll share the responses as soon as we get enough of them in here. But it looks like we have a pretty even mixture across the board here. So we have 6 individuals that indicated they're brand new to this, which you're most welcome here. And I really hope this presentation is kind of tailored towards your eye and showing you what the capabilities of the system are. We have 2 individuals that have seen a couple of examples from Pressbooks. That's really great. Seeing it, honestly, can be a real big hook before you get an exposure through the development side. And then we do have 9 individuals that have a Pressbooks account and have either played around a little bit in there or are really ready to start exploring some of these advanced features. So thank you very much for humoring me on those poll results. And we will definitely pull some more polls up as we continue on in the session today. So in summary, to give you a little bit more of a lengthy definition, as Pressbooks specifies itself, Pressbooks supports blended and online learning with an intuitive authoring platform for educational material, an extensive directory of public books and open educational resources, and secure methods of delivering content to your learning management system. So again, you can tell that we're really working within the arena of online and blended learning here. And Pressbooks is generally most effective if there is some sort of a learning source or a course, such as something in an LMS, if you are actually using it in the format of an open textbook. So let's talk a little bit about the OpenOCO Pressbooks timeline. How did we actually get to having a live website for these 25 OCO institutions to be able to develop these collaborative projects? So I'm going to pull you all the way back to April 2020, which if you remember about this time last year, that's when everything had switched to virtual. And we were obviously kind of in a panic trying to figure out how we're going to do all of these courses in a virtual format, or I should say remote format at that time. So our committee, while all that was going on, was actually very busy at evaluating OER development platforms. We knew from prior experience working with OSU that they had Pressbooks, but we did also check out some other platforms whenever we were evaluating products to really try to gauge what is the most effective tool that really is going to meet the needs of our groups. In May of 2020, the Cole Open Educational Resources Subcommittee made a formal recommendation to the Online Consortium of Oklahoma for an annual subscription to Pressbooks EDU. So this right here really demonstrates the workflow potential between Council for Online Learning Excellence, which again is a volunteer community, to the Online Consortium of Oklahoma, which actually has the financial capability to invest in these kinds of shared resources. So one short month later, the Online Consortium of Oklahoma Steering Committee, which is comprised of members from your institutions, the 25 members that we have, approved the request to fund the Pressbooks subscription. We will go over the kind of specifics of this agreement and the actual amount of that on the next slide here, I believe. In October of 2020, so you can see a couple of months past there in between where we had to go through the procurement process and obviously the setup process for our new website, we formally launched OpenOCO with a new web URL. So if you visit open.ocolearnok.org today, you will now find that we have our live Pressbooks website up and running. More recently, this year in 2021, in January, we began highlighting OpenOCO, or I should say Pressbooks began highlighting OpenOCO during their training events. So it was really exciting, I think, for our project group to be kind of put on the forefront, so early on in this project through the great design and functionality of the OpenOCO website, which I'll review some of here shortly when we get into the demonstration. In February 2021, this I think was probably the most exciting one recently, the Online Consortium of Oklahoma approved $15,000 in initial project funding for OpenOCO collaborative project grants. And I do say initial project funding because we do have other sources of revenue from the Online Consortium that will hopefully replenish these grant funds as they do run out. And then again, with summer 2021, where we're looking ahead right now, is having that formalized project procedure so that we have very clear alignment and kind of policies in place for working with our faculty, author contributors, and then again, that funding in place and actually made available to our project collaborators. So this is not something, again, that just came about overnight. You can tell that there was a lot of planning and processes that went into actually getting these opportunities made available. And again, I am sure that we will probably have another session this time next year during the Learning Innovation Summit. And who knows what this is going to look like moving out here. Our online collaboration groups do go through strategic planning processes every summer. And so we will be kind of making a new strategic plan once these opportunities become available and are a little bit more formalized later on this summer. So let's go ahead and move on here.
Hey, Brad,
Yes.
Simon had a chat. He said, in a broad sense, would it be safe to say that the LCO Pressbooks Library is, and I can't say that word, Simon, to the University of Minnesota's open textbook library? And he has a
I
link in
believe
the
so.
chat.
Yeah, I do believe so, Simon, that it is very similar to that. And it's kind of interesting sometimes when you see that open in the prefix of a web URL, you'll notice that the websites look very similar and that many institutions, organizations, statewide boards are using Pressbooks for their publishing initiatives. So if what I show you here in a moment when we get to our website looks familiar to the University of Minnesota's open textbook library, it is likely that it's a similar, if not the same platform out there. And I also Lisa Chintamani's question in the chat there as well. Which 25 institutions in Oklahoma are participating in the initiative? And Chintamani, I'll actually refer you to the Online Consortium's website, which is OCOlearnok.org. And if you scroll down to the bottom of our webpage there, you'll actually see the list of logos for the 25 institutions that are members of OCO. And I am aware that you were part of the University of Central Oklahoma, and UCO is a member of the Online Consortium. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a winning website, in my personal opinion, or a winning platform, as I really should say, with Pressbooks. You, again, can access this by logging into open.ocolearnok.org. And again, this is really what you'll actually see as a carbon copy on the web page. It's pretty attractive. You'll actually see the background image there is licensed through Creative Commons. It is actually part of the Wichita Mountains Wildlife Refuge. So we did try to keep with some Oklahoma theming on there and imagery, which again, I think is really good to try to represent who we are and what we're doing with our students. As I mentioned earlier, I did want to talk to you all a little bit about the actual model of the agreement that we have for Pressbooks to really give you an idea of how substantial this investment actually is for our consortium. So we do actually pay $15,000 as an annual subscription fee by the Online Consortium of Oklahoma for 30 total projects within this Pressbooks platform. Kathy, I believe, mentioned earlier that some of the institutions have opted into the unlimited project access option, which is available to all of the 25 OCO member institutions if they wish to pay on an individual basis for this add-on fee. It's actually fairly reasonable. It's $1 per FTE, and Pressbooks requires a minimum of $1,500 per year for an annual subscription or a maximum of $5,000 a year. Currently, we do have 2 institutions that have opted into the unlimited buy-up, East Central University and Redlands Community College. So what those faculty at ECU and Redlands have the option to do now is create unlimited textbooks, unlimited resources available in Open OCO. They could, in fact, even invite their students to become authors within the Open OCO platform if there were ever a need to build that kind of publication capability among students there. Pressbooks, one of the other reasons that we did opt into this tool is that it does feature learning technology integration. So one of the most common features that I know many faculty enjoy about tools like McGraw-Hill Connect or Pearson's MyLab is that there is a grade passback function for activities that students complete within the publisher's resources. So Pressbooks has a very similar feature to where activities can actually be embedded within Pressbooks and then connected back to your institution's learning management system for graded activities. Institutions that do the unlimited buy-up also have the options to enable single sign-on for the institution. So this would be most effective, for example, if you really wanted to scale up your Pressbooks initiative, perhaps give the option to students, because again, it's unlimited access for your entire campus. Every person has your .edu affiliation there. So really significant options that we see as being available. And again, one of the reasons that Pressbooks, I think, was chosen or elected by this committee is because there's a balance between having this shared capacity of 30 projects, but also giving institutions the individual opportunity to be able to scale up their OER platform and usage here. So I actually do serve as the super admin, as it's called within the platform for Open OCO. So if any of your institutions do decide to do this unlimited buy-up, there is a good opportunity that I will, or a good chance that I will have an opportunity to work closely with a member of your campus that should serve as the primary administrator and point of contact for Pressbooks. So as we have it right now, for example, Marla Lobley at East Central University is the primary point of contact for their Pressbooks initiative. And then Sharon Riley, who I believe works in the Learning Resource Center at Redlands Community College, is the OER representative or Pressbooks representative there. And then Kathy Esmiller, who again was on our previous presentation, is the Open OK State Pressbooks, which is a separate website from the OCO instance. But if we do have any OSU faculty that are on here, you should absolutely reach out to Kathy and inquire about the unlimited opportunity that you have through OSU libraries. Let's see here. Lisa, how am I doing in the chat?
You are doing great. No additional. Kathy and Jamie were talking about some additional information about Pressbooks and talking about more of it being a catalog and things like that.
Great. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy and Jamie. All right. So it's time to take a look. I am going to keep this demonstration very simple for everybody today because I know that Pressbooks and new technologies like this can sometimes seem a little bit intimidating. So my real goal that I have with you here today is to try to keep this as simple as possible and really give you a perspective of how you could actually interact with this system here. So the very first thing, though, that I do want to do before we kind of get into the demo session here is tell you about the Pressbooks directory. So this is, I think, one of the coolest features for Pressbooks that actually came out after we acquired our subscription to the system. So Pressbooks, knowing that all of their clients out there, which are numerous and include even systems like the British Columbia campus system in Canada, they feature or make their books available in a discoverable directory that Pressbooks hosts. So it's a really great resource. Again, if you say you don't want to do those originally authored resources, you're not really interested in remixing or revising, or perhaps you are interested in remixing and revising and you want to see some existing resources that you can kind of pull pieces from, this is an optimal website to visit. So you can actually access the Pressbooks directory by visiting pressbooks.directory, which again is very simple there. And one of the things that we're going to look at here is that there are multiple filters available for what you can look at within the directory here. So if you'll give me just 1 second here, I'm actually going to switch my screen share into my web browser so that we can start looking at this wonderful product. So let's look first at the Pressbooks directory, which again is a super easy to use tool. One of the things that I will mention as a caveat before you start getting into your searches here is that this is only going to find materials that are produced on Pressbooks platforms. Pressbooks is only one of many tools that are available and publishing resources available for open educational resources. So just know that you may, if you are looking to curate OER materials for your course, need to expand your search beyond just this Pressbooks directory in order to really find the maximum amount of material possible. So generally, the easiest way to get started on this is actually searching by keywords. So as I think I've mentioned in this session before, Lisa Friesen, our moderator, and myself are actually working together on a Pressbooks project right now for our data analysis and interpretation course. So if I, for example, wanted to find textbooks in here that have been developed on the subject of data analysis, all I have to do is type that simple search right here. And we'll see what comes up. So again, it's kind of funny because you can see that there's, I believe, a Spanish textbook that's been listed right here. So you'll have to do some probably narrowing and filtering on your search to get a little bit deeper. One of the ways that I recommend sometimes searching for OER is actually pulling in the learning outcomes that are stated for your course. But looking at the list right here, you can see there's a lot of good information that Pressbooks presents about the books within their directory here. So it'll tell you who the author is, general subject or tags that have been programmed into it, the last time the book was actually updated. You can also see the word count that's available, storage size, which obviously, let's look at the comparison between a primer for computational biology, which is 927 megabytes, versus Para Vivir con Salud, which is only 189.99 megabytes. So lots more media you can probably expect to find in this primer for computational biology here. Expanding to some of the filters that you see on the left-hand side here, I believe Abe mentioned in the last session something about Creative Commons licensing, and that is something to be very aware of when you're looking for resources in the directory here. There is this category of all rights reserved. So obviously, whenever you're creating OER, there is somebody that maintains a copyright to that materials, but elects to license it through Creative Commons. So if you're concerned, for example, that you want to be able to remix or revise some of the content from your OER, you would perhaps want to consider eliminating a category like this from your search. Again, the purpose of this session today is not to do a deep dive on the Creative Commons licensing, but I will just kind of give everybody a word of caution that these licenses that you see right here do mean different things and give you different permissions on what you can do with the resources that you're actually looking at. So again, some of them may be just a simple CC BY, where you can do any kind of remixing, revision to the resource and just give attribution, whereas you may actually have one that's CC BY non-commercial, which means that you cannot earn revenue off of it, and no derivative, which means that it actually has to be shared in its complete original form. You can also see that there is another category here for public domain. So that could be perhaps government documents that are listed. I have a feeling that this is probably some of the material that's related to Canada's initiatives, because they have actually done things at the federal level among their provinces using Pressbooks as a tool. And they've actually done a lot of headway, I would say, in representing underrepresented populations and the Indigenous populations of Canada through OER. You can also, again, filter by other areas such as subject down here. So again, say if I'm really narrowing my focus to data analysis within organizational leadership, I might want to narrow my search within business and management. Perhaps some psychology in there could be helpful too, because again, it's a pretty interdisciplinary topic that we're looking at here. So once you narrow down the search and actually find what it is that you're looking for, and actually, I apologize, I do want to cover a couple of others of these. So you can narrow by networks. So say, for example, you really want to see the British Columbia campus, which has a lot of great OER texts. You can do that and just narrow by only original network partner there. Publisher is also another field that you can narrow by. And then one of them that I really do like in here as well is the H5P filter. So H5P is actually a learning object creator, which allows you to do those kinds of things that I mentioned with like McGraw-Hill Connect, for example. So you can filter by those and kind of get very easy access. So let's go ahead and kind of dig back into the Pressbooks. So if you click on one of these, it will actually take you out to the book's URL or web page where it sits on the internet. And again, one of the things that I really enjoy most about Pressbooks, and what I'm going to very quickly demonstrate for you here, is that, say, for example, I like this text a lot. I really want to just pull it over, very simply adapt it as a resource in my course to provide right away. It's a very simple process that you actually have to do that. So in order to get there, I am going to actually copy and paste, or copy, I should say, this link to my clipboard real fast. So it's on the basis of URL. So copy the URL from the Pressbooks page for this book. And then what we're going to do is actually go over to the OpenOCO platform and clone this book into our system so that it actually becomes available in my catalog. So again, if you happen to be following along here, you can go to open.ocolearnok.org. But again, just to give you a quick idea of how easy it is to actually implement these things, all I have to do is go into my administration dashboard. Once I'm logged into my account, there's a tab up here that says My Books, and I'm actually going to choose this option here to clone a book. You very simply just have to paste the URL from the original source where you found that book. So you can see, again, Financial Management 2nd edition. The link did pull over there. You also have to tell it, where do you want this to actually sit on your Pressbooks website? So for the sake of this, I'm going to title this OKLIS Financial Management. And then you can also customize the book title if you wish, or you can leave it optional and it will actually pull in the title from the original source here. So this is going to very simply go through, let me see here. Okay. We'll just do OKLIS there, sorry. So as you watch this green progress bar scroll through here, Pressbooks right now is looking up the source book. So our OpenOCO Pressbooks website is going out to the MSU Pressbooks website and actually retrieving this. Next step on here is it creates the target book. So it's physically establishing a space on our web server for this new book to exist here. It's cloning all of the material from the book. So everything that's contained within the chapter, the metadata, all of the front matter material, very quickly coming in. Chapters coming in individually now, which you can see it's making progress with the total of 27 available. We're hitting at about 40 seconds in this process now. And once again, if you're working with a large book like that one that we saw earlier that was about 900 megabytes, this part of the process would take a little bit longer for that information to copy over to the server. And I do apologize. I know I'm running up here on time really fast. Almost getting there. So I wondered if this might happen. So I did prepare for this in advance and actually pulled over another book. So once you have your book pulled over into the Pressbooks or Open OCO Pressbooks, which is our account, that's when you actually get access to be able to start editing. So I pulled over this Italian textbook earlier, which you can tell has multiple units and chapters in here. And again, all it takes is, for me to go in here and make changes. I just click on those, which again, functions very similarly to how a WordPress blog works. And again, I can make changes all day long to the content that's in here, add multimedia, add other functions such as those H5P learning objects in here. If at any point you are working in your book within Pressbooks and you want to see a preview of it, you can actually click this permalink button that's right here, and it will take you out to your book. So this, what you're seeing right here on the screen, is actually the public interface of Pressbooks. So very simple to use, very easy to navigate, very accessible. And I've actually listed this Italian book as a sample publicly within our OpenOCO catalog. So knowing that we're running out of time here real fast, I encourage you to continue to get out there, play with that Italian textbook, even though you may not necessarily be able to read it, and get to know Pressbooks a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen because I know that we're running out of time here. And I would like to go ahead and actually launch my polling for the other questions that we have here. So excuse me while I do this one momentarily. So seeing the brief information that you have about Pressbooks today, I would like to ask this group, what kind of demonstrations might be helpful to you to try to dig into a little bit of a next step here? So could it be navigating the Pressbooks interface, learning how to work and edit a book that you want to pull over, how to find OER built in Pressbooks already, constructing OER in Pressbooks with your own content, ensuring digital accessibility in Pressbooks, how to use Pressbooks plugins, which I know I didn't get into much here, but H5P is actually the most popular option, but we do have Hypothesis, which is a collaborative annotation tool. So you can actually have your students in your course working directly in your textbook like a discussion board and using it and posting in it like they do on social media. How exciting is that opportunity? MathJax, for those of you that are teaching in math or statistics, is another tool that's embedded here. LaTeX, I didn't list here, but is also embedded or integrated. And then TablePress is another table publishing platform that Pressbooks also has to make tables more accessible for users that need that. So